Well, as you've noticed that as Mexican military, Mexican law enforcement, they took out El Mincho. He's a big cartel dude. He's on the other side now, somewhere out there on the other side in darkness, probably. So El Mencho's gone, and there was a flare up and all sorts of firefights. And if you saw anything on social media, that's all you would see on Sunday afternoon. Fires everywhere on the Pacific coast of Mexico and south of Mexico City as well, and then other places also having seeing a lot of cartel violence. So let's recap what took place the past 24 hours plus from Breitbart.com. Always looking at Mexico and issues south of the border for the longest time, anything cartel related. Ildefonso Poncho Ortiz, who's putting me to shame today because if you see this video, he loves America more than I do. Look at his glasses. It's like the American flag on his glass. Look at my weenie little glass, all black. So yeah, he loves America more than I do. USA, USA. All right, man. So what happened? So we got Caroline Levitt at the White House saying that yes, the U.S. did provide information or something. So as far as all your write-ups and follow-ups and the folks that are feeding information to you from Mexico, you have a vast network down there. What happened on Sunday that they killed Mencho and all that?
Well, on Sunday, it was an operation. It was Mexican military forces and National Guardsmen. It was sort of a special forces team. That team, if you look at our one of our stories, they had received special training from U.S. Navy SEALs. They arrived in
Mhm.
Mexico last week. Pretty much, they sequestered them. They took all their phones and all the communication devices, and it will, this team of Navy SEALs went into Mexico to train Mexican military forces specifically on to take down certain cartel bosses that they're going after.
Can I go back and
Mhm.
rewind to what you just said? We had our special forces,
Mm.
American special forces, going to Mexico to train some of their elite and special forces. But then you said they took all their phones, communicate. The Mexicans took all their phones, communication devices away. Because every time that you talk about stuff like this, I'm always thinking, can they be trusted? Because what's they learned something from our special forces, and for the highest dollar, they'll sell it and become security forces for cartels in the future.
Well, you see, it's not so much the troops that are the problem; it's their bosses, and that's been the problem in Mexico with prior attempts to capture El Mencho when they tried to capture El Chapo's sons, where the U.S. has basically given them actionable intelligence saying that he's right here,
Yeah.
and that information gets leaked not by the boots on the ground
Mm.
but by the heads of the agencies in Mexico. That's been the problem. I mean, if we look at some of our reporting, we've connected Mexico's secretary of the army directly to El Mencho in a friendly relationship as compadres.
Mm.
And that is some of our reporting where we've gone on record reporting on that, and this is backed up by sources that we have at the highest levels in the intelligence community.
Mhm.
So this operation took place. They went to capture El Mencho. Mexican forces fought with El Mencho security forces. I mean, they were using RPGs. These guys had all the weapons that you can think of. I mean, they fired Russian RPGs at the Mexican forces. It was a big old shootout. Multiple gunmen died. Some soldiers were injured. So they El Mencho and two other men were injured in the shootout. They medevaced them to a hospital, and all three did not survive. One of those individuals, El Mencho. Almost immediately after that clash took place, you started seeing violence pop up in various places. I mean, even just south of us in Reynosa,
Mhm.
we have to remember that the Gulf Cartel faction that controls Reynosa is connected to Cartel Jalisco New Generation. This is one of their avenues that they use to get their goods, to bring the drugs into the U.S. and to bring the fuel smuggling into Mexico. So this is a very important corridor for them. So in Reynosa, they pretty much set up blockades. They torch vehicles, put out road spikes, caused chaos in Reynosa and at five other municipalities in Tamaulipas. Similar scenario happened in Jalisco, where it was even bigger because that's where El Mencho's home front is from. The state of Michoacan, Oaxaca, Guanajuato. Uh, The last count that I had from confirmed with Mexican authorities was 18 states in Mexico, which is pretty much wherever Mencho's Cartel Jalisco New Generation had a presence. Pretty much they put up blockades, spread terror, torch buildings. There were some innocent civilians that were hurt in Mexico. Um, it was a show of force by the cartel, basically, as in response
Yeah.
to an affront that having killed El Mencho.
Is that spasm of violence done now, pretty much?
As of this morning, it
Yeah.
is done.
Okay.
Yes, but it basically took Mexico's forces an entire day,
Yeah.
which is very sad that one cartel has enough power to basically freeze an entire country,
Yes, sir.
and it takes the government an entire day to put it down.
Well, it really is sad, yes, to see such a beautiful nation and culture and beautiful places to visit and extended family, but it's a cartel state. The cartels run the show, and you took off that head, but there's other heads coming up here pretty soon. Poncho Ortiz, Breitbart.com, again, Cartel Chronicles. They're very well connected with sources in Mexico, other reporters who courageously get the information back to Breitbart.com. You want to know what's going on south of the border? Yeah, you definitely need to visit Breitbart.com. Ildefonso Poncho Ortiz joining me now. I think we need to go back to El Mencho. Like, who was this guy? Because this is not the first time you've mentioned him before. I think, what was he here in custody, kicked back to Mexico? Like, what's the history on this guy?
Well, basically, this guy had a history in the U.S., was arrested in the U.S. Years ago, goes back into Mexico.
He was incarcerated here for
Yes,
some time?
he did some time in
For
California.
drug trafficking and all that? Okay.
At the time, he was a minor player.
Okay.
But he goes back into Mexico, and the way he operated was very quiet. He built up an empire. He married into a family that was connected, the Valencia family, which basically him and his brother-in-laws at the time went by the name Los Queenies.
I love that.
And
the nicknames they use. Yeah,
they pretty much were able to build a
Los
very
Queenies.
strong financial empire. They kind of took over an offshoot of the Guadalajara cartel that had evolved, become part of the Sinaloa cartel. So they took over that offshoot, and then they quietly started spreading, and pretty much they focused in other countries. And then once they made their big boom about 15 years ago or so, they had built. They were already a powerful player. So in a way, they came out of nowhere. And one thing they did is they pretty much had a very powerful security forces. They had recruited Colombian terrorists, people from Las FARC and the guerrillas
Wow.
over there. So, and then they had recruited from other places, top tier operators. So they have very competent security forces. But by them recruiting these terrorists, they had learned on the use of explosives, and that was one of the things that in the last 5 to 8 years allowed them to get even more influence when fighting other cartels, because they were the ones that revolutionized the use of drones to drop explosives.
Okay.
Now everybody does it, but at the time they were the first ones.
Like crazy.
They pretty much were able to come up with certain ideas to drop drones using commercial available drones,
Yeah.
outfit them to drop improvised explosives, and it became a trend, and that's one of the main things that they do.
That's before Ukraine started using drones to kill Russian soldiers in the film. You see the video of them dropping munitions. The cartels perfected that. Wow.
It's very funny. The cartel started with that idea. Ukraine happens, and then in a way they were feeding off each other.
The guerrilla warfare. Wow, that's crazy.
They were seeing what was working in Ukraine, and then some of the stuff that was happening in Mexico. People in Ukraine were picking up on those tactics. So, how to make them work better. And to the point now where all the cartels in Mexico have those weaponized drones. Now they're getting EMP type weapons to shoot down rival drones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where things are at in Mexico.
Ildefonso Poncho Ortiz, Breitbart.com, Cartel Chronicles. Again, the spasm of violence yesterday as this drug lord El Mencho is taken out by Mexican forces who were, I mean, is it fair for me to say were taken by the ear? We had U.S. forces taking them by the ear. Go over here, go get him, capture him, or kill him. Right? Like the U.S. was involved in
The
this
U.S.
effort.
was definitely involved, and I will
Okay.
say this: I mean, this is directly tied to pressure from the Trump administration. If we will look back during the previous administration, the cartels had free reign in Mexico. That was one of the things that the Trump administration changed, where they actually were very strict on Mexico, very hard. The threat of tariffs. There have been declared foreign terrorist groups, and when you declare a group a foreign terrorist group, if that country protects them, they can become a foreign sponsor of terrorism, which would basically bankrupt Mexico. So that's the big threat that Sheinbaum is facing. She has the pressure from the U.S., and then she has to answer to the Morena party, which is a cartel of its own that works with all these cartels. And this pressure from the U.S. basically has been pushing Mexico to do certain things.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they had focused on the Sinaloa cartel, Gulf cartel, at some point, some of the CDN Los Zetas, but they hadn't really touched Cartel Jalisco New Generation. And this is like the first time where I can say, okay, I'm going to take off my hat. Claudia's people, they did their job. They took
Mexican
off
President Scheinbaum. Yeah.
the big the biggest drug lord in Mexico, the most dangerous one, because his cartel, I mean, they are the first ones to cross the line into full on terrorism. There's been multiple mass shootings in Mexico directly linked to Cartel Jalisco New Generation, where innocent victims have been targeted. They've used explosives left and right in states like Guanajuato to target innocent victims as a show of force. So this is not just a drug trafficking organization. This is a full blown terrorist organization. And now that he's gone, we'll see where the pieces fall. But more than likely, CJNG will be fracturing into various factions, and that's the trend that I see. Their era is starting to come to a close.
If, of course, the State Department saying shelter in place. If you're in Mexico, we look at the Pacific coast of Mexico, Manzanillo nearby. Of course, is that the hottest spot of violence in Mexico where you say, okay, it's real messy there. Let's go to Cancun. There, it's on the other side, Quintana Roo. We can go with it. It's safer in Cancun and
In a
Quintana
way,
Roo.
it is because Jalisco had a presence in the Cancun area, out there towards the Gulf states, like the Caribbean, but they didn't have that strong of a presence. That area was more controlled by the Sinaloa cartel and factions of the cartel. So Jalisco was trying to make inroads. So really, the hub of the violence is more towards the west, and also Tamaulipas, which is a big corridor for them.
On social media, that's what I want to ask you about. Now, I grabbed something I was sharing, but I was laughing at one picture. I just shared it was a cluster of pictures. Some were probably real. Some of the video probably real from the airport. People were running in Guadalajara, I believe, or wherever they were running at the airport. The gunfire down the hall at the airport. But then there was one that showed a plane, like one of the, completely on fire. No, that's not the case. So you just don't. The reason I mentioned social media is because some people were commenting and looking for. They were fearing kidnappings, that the cartels would kidnap Americans, and because they declared war on Mexico, they declared war on the United States. So what?
Sadly, a lot of people. There's been a lot of misinformation that's been thrown out there.
Yep.
A lot of AI videos, AI photos. There's been even big name social media people have been pushing that Americans are being kidnapped or they are going to be kidnapped. That has not happened. There is what happened in Mexico was very localized in certain parts, and it was a way of immediate response. Uh, I and sad. It's sad to say, but it caused more fear. All this social media than it was. I mean, it was significant enough that half of Mexico was pretty much shut down for a day, and it's pretty sad. But there was a lot of additional fear mongering that was spread through people looking for clicks, and that is something very sad as well.
Yeah. Well, either way, we got spring break coming up here pretty soon, and a lot of people still go. They still go to the touristy places in Mexico. So, oh, look, the resorts are fine. They don't touch us. There's a point to be made there. If they ever do make the mistake the cartels do, taking American hostages, or you get a high profile story like that, all these concerns of U.S. military and special forces going in there and blowing things to bits, that might be what would push things over the top.
Well, that is a concern that it comes as you decapitate a cartel. The people that take over tend to be a little bit more reckless.
Yeah.
So there could be a heightened danger where this concern of not targeting Americans, not drawing attention, may not be there anymore because the new generation that comes in and takes over, they're pretty much living to the week. They're not really
Yeah.
concerned about long term because they may not last there. So that is something that could change in the near future.
What are you working on right now at Breitbart?
Pretty much following up on this, seeing what's happening with CJNG because a lot of Mexico's political elite are connected to this cartel. I mean, Mexico's former Secretary of the Interior, Adán Augusto López, was directly tied to this cartel. His best friend ran a faction known as La Barredora. So there's going to be a bigger political fallout in all this, especially how Morena and the ruling party are trying to juggle all what happens with this cartel as it fractures and how it affects the politics in Mexico.
Punchy, be safe. Thank you for the updates. You want to know what's going on south of the border? Cartel Chronicles, the reports from Mexico, Breitbart.com, Breitbart.com. Ildefonso Poncho Ortiz. Be well, brother.
Thank you. My pleasure.